Hello and welcome back to Sabbatical Stories. I'm your host Bex Thomas and I created this podcast to inspire courage and normalise taking a break from your career. If you find these stories valuable, please do subscribe, rate and share the show. It really means a lot to us. Today I'm joined by Laura, an Australian with an American accent and a flair for building marketing magic from the ground up. After more than 15 years in corporate marketing, she packed up her Sydney home and took a 5-month eat, pray, love style adventure around Europe. But what started as a personal reset became something much bigger, a re-evaluation of how she wanted to live and work. And when she returned to Sydney, Laura did what most of us would do. She started applying for full-time roles, but none of it felt right. Through a series of conversations and a lot of self-reflection, she realised that the traditional path wasn't for her anymore. So she took the leap. She built a business on her own terms as a fractional head of marketing and now works remotely with a diverse mix of clients while living a life that feels expansive, flexible and deeply aligned. For anyone returning from a break and not really vibing going back to corporate, this one's for you. Deep down, you've tried, dig deep, search wide, enjoy your climb, it's all for you. Good morning, Laura. Is it morning with you?
It is not. It is, what time is it? 4:12 in the afternoon in Bali.
In Bali. Oh, and whilst I sit here in autumn clothes, that sounds amazing to be in Bali. Thank you so much for your time and agreeing to come on and share your story. I always ask guests to introduce themselves. So can you give us an introduction to Laura and give us an insight into your sabbatical story, please?
Yeah, sure. Happy to be here. So thank you for having me. So I'm Laura, as we know. I am an American, but I've called Sydney home for the last 12 years. So I moved to Sydney as a young 24-year-old, came down for a 1-year journey and never left. And I spent most of my year working in event marketing, and then COVID happened and I moved into HR tech and cybersecurity. And most recently, I guess my last full-time job was at Miro, which is the digital whiteboard collaboration tool down in Australia. And I was helping lead the marketing efforts there. And I got to 2 years at Miro and I just said, I've never taken a break. And I just said, now's the time. So I called my boss into a meeting room and I said, hey, I'm actually going to quit. And they said, where are you going? And I said, I don't know, nowhere. Maybe I'll stay in Sydney. Maybe I'll do something, I don't know. And that just started my journey in a sabbatical. So that was 2 years ago. I spent 5 months in Europe, which was amazing after that, and have been kind of finding my feet and building my own fractional marketing freelance consulting business ever since. So no regrets.
We connected because I saw a post on LinkedIn and it was your post. It must have been a few months ago now because it was a year to the day, I think, that you'd started your break. And the post was about the fact that you were off again and that you were off on this sort of life by design and that you hadn't gone back to corporate per se, or corporate you had, but not to work for somebody, actually setting up your own business. And obviously the whole life by design and sabbatical piece, I was like, oh my goodness, we need to connect. And it really resonated, similar to my story in the fact that took a sabbatical, which opened my eyes to not wanting to live that blueprint life, I suppose. But it took my husband and I 5 years to go back, plan, make that a reality. And you clearly did it like instantly or within 12 months. So talk us through like what went through your head when you came back and sort of how you then really lived life by design almost immediately.
Well, it definitely didn't take 5 years, but I think it was a long time building. So when I worked in events, that's such a draining experience, right? You're running in these 12 to 18 week event cycles. You're doing 8 events a year. You're working weekends, you're working long nights. And I left that right in the middle of COVID, then moved into the world of tech. Startup tech world is crazy and draining in its own way. So I feel like there was this kind of just eternal burnout, but building a little bit. And I got to this point where I was working at Miro and I just said, like, I can see the next year ahead and I'm not necessarily like fully inspired by it, I guess. Like I will learn and I will grow. What am I doing? Like I had turned 34 and I was like, what am I doing? I need to just make a move. And so yeah, I went traveling and I came back to Sydney after those 5 months of just exploring and running around Europe like a crazy lady, living my best life. And I started applying for full-time jobs, and they were less than what I was making before. And they wanted like full strategy documents written in the interview process. And I was just feeling like, I left this. Why am I going back to this? And I left it for a reason. And I started having conversations with people who were doing fractional marketing. And I started having conversations with people who were running their own marketing agencies. And I looked at them and I said, who am I to think I can do that, first of all? So I would have all these conversations being like trying to gather information, but I was so scared. And I finally, like my, I think 8th conversation I had with someone, they sat me down in a coffee shop and they said, like, stop having conversations, just do something. Stop talking to people, just do it. And that was the thing that was like, yeah, okay, you're right. Like, I'm overthinking this. I just need to, and I put a post up, I don't know, on my LinkedIn, maybe November last year, being like, hey, I'm going to do freelance marketing. And I had an old boss reach out who needed some marketing help, and it just kind of like snowballed from there. And once I put it out, like, this is a bit woo-woo, I'm in Bali, so maybe this is like the universe talking, but once I literally put it out in the universe just delivered. And it was like things just kept rolling, and I just kept being able to build clients. And I think going out there with a bit more confidence too, to be like, yeah, of course I can do this. Like, I've got 1 client, who's to say I can't have 4 clients or I can't have 5 clients? Been ups and downs, and there's been wins and losses, but we're learning, and every day is a new adventure. But yeah, so far so good.
Amazing. You mentioned like coming back and starting to apply for jobs and thinking there was a reason that I left. And you touched on, you hadn't had a break. 2 years into Miro, you were like, no, I need a break. I want a break. But was there a sort of underlying other reason? Like, what was the true reason that you left? And when you went back and started applying, thinking, no, I left for a reason, the reason's still there.
This is like gonna sound so wanky, and I hate to call myself a trailblazer, but like, I remember an English teacher called me a trailblazer once because I was like going to a different school than everyone else at high school. And like, there've just been these little points in my life where I've taken the path less traveled, right? Like, I was 24, I had just moved into Brooklyn with my 4 girlfriends. We were like living the Sex and the City life, and then Australia came on the table, and it was like, oh crap, what do I do? Do I stay in New York and live this adventure that I'm so excited for, or do I just go to Australia for a year and try it out? And my mom was like, you'll regret it if you don't go to Australia. So I went to Australia, and that just like opened a door for me, And I think I kind of got to the end of my time at Miro, and I was like, what is actually the point of this? Not to be like, what's the point of capitalism and this giant existential like dread, but I was like, I don't have a house. I don't have a mortgage. Like, I don't have kids. I'm single at the moment. Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I feeling like I'm stuck here? Like, there's a whole world to explore. And I think Sydney is amazing, and I love living in Australia, but I think sometimes you also do realize you're on an island in the middle of nowhere, and that really hit me. And I was like, do I want to be on an island in the middle of nowhere for the rest of my life? You have disposable income right now, like you've had really good jobs where you've been able to save money, and go spend it. Like, why are we sitting here waiting? And I think it took me about 6 weeks, like therapy and crying and like trying to decide if quitting was the right thing for me. The second I resigned, it was like this literal weight had lifted off my shoulders, and I was like, oh, this was the right decision. You should have done it 6 weeks ago. I want to work to live, not live to work. And I kind of felt like I was around a lot of living to work, paying off mortgages and putting kids through private school and all of this stuff. And I was just like, I'm not constrained by that at the moment. And I might be someday, but right now, what am I doing? Like, time to go.
Yeah.
Let's go explore. And explore I did.
And it sounds as though it's almost a why wouldn't I, rather than, why would I?
Totally.
And as you say, not having those, sometimes they can be perceived as limiting factors, but there are considerations, and some people do choose that actually the priority is to have that stability, the mortgage, bringing up the children, for that chapter that works for them. And therefore there are constraints on how much they need to earn or how much, but if you don't have that, like, why wouldn't you go?
Completely. And I think I always looked to like Australian culture and was so envious of like the 18-year-olds that just like go out for a year and do their gap year. Like, that is so not the American culture and so not the American way of life. Like, I was literally babysitting as like a mother's helper since I was 10 years old, Like, I literally have worked most of my childhood and like straight to uni and work through uni, and then you get a job right after uni. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, this, like, I'm only going to get older. And we gotta just do it.
and you're right, that cultural difference between the States and Australia is huge, isn't it? When we think about career breaks and sabbaticals, Australia, we even have that long service leave that, is expected, or if you're in somewhere in a company for a period of time, you actually accumulate that. I was talking to somebody in the States the other day, and they just couldn't even grasp that concept. They have 2 weeks, if they're lucky, a year, and for holiday, and that's it. So I think the cultural difference is huge. You mentioned Australia was on the table. How did that come about then? If you were living this Sex in the City lifestyle, doesn't sound like you were looking for it.
No, I wasn't. So I worked for this event organizer in the States, which is what brought me to Australia. So I used to do the marketing for like New York Comic Con and Chicago Comic Con and Star Wars expos around the world. And we launched a Comic Con event down in Australia. And this is like my memory of it. I don't know if this is actually what happened, because it feels like a little bit of an HR violation. We had bought these shows in Australia. They took everyone in the team who was single in a room, and they said, guys, we have an opportunity for someone to move to Australia to help launch these Comic-Con events. And I said, oh, I'm the youngest person in this room. Like, that's just a nice thing that they've included me in this. And then the day after, the VP of the company was like, would you move to Australia? And meanwhile, I'm like 23 years old. This is my first job out of school. What do you mean would I move to Australia? And they're like, oh, we think you'd like be great. Like, you've been doing the marketing here for 2 years. Like, do you want to go give it a shot? And I was like, I guess so. Like, no, but yes, I don't know. Like, I didn't know what to say. And it was such a long, drawn out process. Like I said, I think they put it on the table in like August, and I had just moved into New York with my girlfriends in like July, and March finally rolled around, and they were like, cool, well, time to go. You got 3 weeks, your visa's approved, do you want to go? And I was like, I guess so.
Yeah.
And so 12 years later, I'm now an Australian citizen, and it's been, I don't know, life-changing, I guess, to say that. And I'm so grateful for it, because I wouldn't have taken the sabbatical, I don't think, if I hadn't moved to Australia, Like, I think my life would have been so different if I had remained in the States and not been, I guess, exposed, like we say, to this cultural differences and like just the different way of looking at things. America, especially kind of where I've grown up in that corridor of like New England and the Northeast, it's very work, New York, like you literally live to work. And Australia, I think had an effect on me for sure.
And sounds like kudos to your mum for saying, if you don't go, you'll regret it.
Oh, truly. Like, I don't know if she regrets saying that to me now that I've not come home, but like she said it for sure.
It's funny. I always say that my mum was amazing at the reverse psychology piece until Australia, because she was also the one that was like, oh yes, go, it'll be an amazing experience. And then 15 years later, you're still not back and still not living at home. It's like, oh, was that the one time it backfired?
Yeah, totally.
So just talk us through the planning for the break itself. So you took 6 weeks to really, I suppose, digest whether you're going to quit or what that sort of looks like. And then what? Like, how do you then plan for the break? How long were you going to take off in the first instance, and what challenges came up throughout that planning period?
The main challenge, I think, in doing the planning and kind of everything was literally just doing it. It was like making that decision to take a break and not know what was next. I truly quit, and I was like, maybe I'll just take 6 weeks off and I'll hang around Sydney, and then I'll like go get a job 6 weeks later and I'll just enjoy life. Like, I didn't know that I was going to go to Europe. I thought, oh, I've got my little car, like I'll just drive around Australia for a little bit. Like, I'll go down the Great Ocean Road, I've never driven that, and I'll go to Perth and go swim with whale sharks and things like that. And that's kind of what I told everyone when I quit. They were like, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I'm just going to go camping in my Kia. So I just kind of hung out in Sydney for 6 weeks. And eventually my brother, he actually lives in Japan, and he moved there shortly after I moved to Australia. He was like, why don't you just come up here? And so I went to Japan, and then 10 days later I was in Turkey, and then 10 days after that I was in Europe and just exploring. And I had no real plans other than I knew my, what is it called, the Schengen visa ended in 90 days. So I had 90 days to explore and run around and kind of see everything I could. And I did, like, it was the most amazing thing to not have Slack, to not have email, to not like be worried about the fact that I had something to go back to. Like, I truly, again, it sounds a little bit wanky, but I truly felt like the most at peace that I've ever felt, where like I could just exist and be. And I met so many interesting people, and I saw so many things, and I traveled, I think all up, I did 10 countries in the like 4.5-5 months. And it was just incredible. It was like the best thing I've ever done. And I highly recommend it.
So what about all of the, I suppose, boring logistical things, like what did you do with your Kia and, apartment or where you were living?
Yeah. So I think part of the reason I left Sydney was because rent prices, I don't know if anyone who listens is a Sydney sider or Australian, but rent prices are insane. And my rent went up like $150 a week. And I was like, well, this is ridiculous. Like, why am I going to stay in Sydney for this? So I just started selling my stuff. And I said, we'll find out what happens when I have no more things left. So I put what was left in storage, sold most of my things. I left my Kia at a friend's house in her garage, and she turned it on, I don't know, every few weeks just to make sure it ran. And I literally packed up life as it was. And I bought myself a Osprey backpack off Facebook Marketplace and put whatever I could in there that I wanted to take, and off I went.
And you mentioned that it was the first time you really felt as though you could exist, like almost that feel of freedom to just be, knowing that you've got 90 days, your intent is to explore and see what you can see and experience different cultures and different countries. What were the biggest lessons that came out of that period of time for you?
The main thing for me was really human connection. We live in a world, we're doing it now, we live in a world behind screens, and we're stuck on our phones, and we're intrigued and engrossed by the algorithms. And traveling by yourself for 90 days or however long, you are your own company, and you are the company that you seek out. Like, I am an extrovert, and I get energy out of being around people and talking to people. And I just met the most incredible people because I would sit at a bar having a beer with my Kindle, and someone would come up and be like, can I sit here? And 4 hours later, we don't speak the same language, but we've had this amazing conversation about life and love and whatever else we are talking about, I spent a bit of the time walking the Camino de Santiago, which is very I don't know, eat, pray, love, I guess. But I met this 66-year-old man who lived half his life in South Africa, half his year in Vienna now, who was just his son lived in Connecticut, which is how we bonded because I'm from Connecticut, which is so random. And we spent 3 days walking together and just learning about each other and having laughs. And we ended up meeting a few weeks later in Vienna, and he toured me around his city. I met this other couple who on the Camino that we then met up in Poland. And you just created these amazing, I think, connections. And it made me just feel, I don't know, so happy and joyous that while the world sometimes feels really doom and gloom, and there's so much negativity happening, and there's so much, I don't know, grief in the world, at the end of the day, people just want to be with people and want to feel community and be part of something. And I think that it just felt really nice to experience that firsthand and meet people with no intention other than to be humans together.
And just engage and be for that moment of time as well. I always feel that once you start to involve technology, or there almost becomes an expectation, whereas actually I think some situations and some interactions are actually meant to just stay there and stay where you've had them and be that moment in time.
Totally.
And maybe you'll never see each other again, maybe you will, but It doesn't matter. I think there's been this such expectation put on, oh my goodness, we meet and then we have to stay in contact, and then you're connected on every social media or exchanged WhatsApp, and actually sometimes when I have these interactions and then they finish, I have this almost guilt, I didn't ask for their number, or I didn't, and actually it's okay, just for that to exist in that liminal space.
Totally. And I think it's part of just staying in the present, right? I think that's one of the things that's really hard. When you're working, you're always looking to the next thing, you're looking to the next deadline, you're looking to the next email, the next meeting, the next whatever. Whereas I had none of that waiting for me, my to-do was to be in the moment and go to a museum and go sit in a cafe and talk to the stranger because I haven't talked to anyone else today, and I just need some endorphins coming in from someone else. And it was incredible.
I think also you touch on a point around that expanding your reference pool, and you would never know that these things were possible, living half of the time in South Africa. And so this half and half life, would you ever know that if you were, I don't know, simply doing the job that you've always done in the city you've always done it, mixing with the same people? It's that and that's the bit why I absolutely love and can't ever see a world without travel in it for me, is because it just opens that reference pool and opens your mind to things that you don't know even were possible or existed. And we've had so many people on this podcast that have shared stories where they just wouldn't have known that it was possible. And again, you touched on when you came back to Sydney, talking to individuals that had done it. And I think that's so key around, if we want to design life post break. It's then about talking to people who have done what maybe we want to do and really sort of picking their brains and picking up hints and tips from them. So going back to the break, you had 90 days in Schengen. Then what? What was after that?
The after that was I booked a flight back to Sydney and I didn't know what, right? Like I literally landed and I remember a friend picked me up at the airport and it was 5 a.m. after traveling and I just started crying. I was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? I just spent this crazy, amazing journey in Europe, like literally eating, praying, loving. I was like, this is the best part of my life to date. It was cold and gray and rainy in Sydney. And I was like, this is miserable. Why am I here? Yeah, I just got an apartment. I like sublet in a few different places and I had enough buffer. I knew I could like financially maintain my life for another kind of 6 months, right? Like I could get a share house. I could exist and just kind of live. It would deplete my savings, which I wasn't really ready to do, but I was like, I could go work in a cafe or something, worst case. But yeah, like I said, I started like doing the whole networking, right? Like getting back on LinkedIn and I'm back, like looking for a job. Anyone know anyone? And having all the conversations with every marketer and everyone I saw was hiring. And I was just like, I went through the process for many, many companies. And I was like, this is just not what I want to do. And that was, yeah, I guess when that flip happened again. But I was really struck by this fear of like, I can't be a freelance marketer. Like I can't be a fractional marketer. And I'm like not capable of doing that. Which is like, the brain is so interesting because I had just done something really brave, right? Where I was like, I have a stable job. I have a really nice salary. I'm going to quit and like not have anything lined up, which was like huge. But then I come back to Sydney and I'm like, you can't do that. Like, you're not good enough to do it. Meanwhile, I have 15 years of marketing experience. I've been like doing marketing. I've been doing marketing well, according to all of my past colleagues and bosses. And it's like, what was stopping me from doing it? It was my own fear. And like I said, it was really that person that sat me down in a coffee shop and said, put it on LinkedIn that you're doing this and just start doing it. You'll figure it out on the way.
Where do you think those old stories had come from? Why do you think your brain, having, as you say, had this, I suppose, example and the data is there to say, I'm brave. I quit a job and off I went and, you know, aren't I amazing? To then go, oh, I can't do this. Like, where do you think that story came from?
I don't know. I guess it's social conditioning, right? Like it's, I don't know, where I grew up, you go to high school, you go to university, you go get a job, and that's what you do. And you follow this ladder and you climb the corporate ladder as high as you can. And to like diverge away from that, I think is so opposite to what I've seen modeled around me. And to your point of not knowing like what's possible until you can see other people doing it. Like, I think that is so true. And until you have that model of someone leading that life that you can follow, it's incredibly scary, right? Because you don't have the data that you've done it. Like I have the data that I've worked full time and that I've been a good employee and I've shown up and I've done my work and I've achieved my KPIs, but I don't have the data to say you can go find your own business and you can go sell yourself and you can be a contractor for a company and you can consult because you have this 15 years of experience. Those things are true, but I don't think I had the data to say that. And I think I was stuck in this social conditioning of, you know, this is what you do. You go to work and you take your backpack and you put it on the same way you go to school, you know, and you sit behind the cubicle. And obviously we don't do that anymore, but I think that was the path that I really, really believed. And it was so scary to say, no, you know what, today I'm going to send out 3 LinkedIn messages and say, hey, I am doing freelance marketing. Like, do you need any help? And see what comes back. And those were terrible messages to send. Like, they felt so incredibly scary, but I'm very glad I sent them.
What felt scary about them?
I think there's the rejection. I think there's like this inherent fear of rejection, right? As humans, like we want to be accepted. We want to I think it's human nature to be part of the collective in our tribes and whatever else. So I think there's the rejection part of it. I think it's there was this potential validation that I was going to validate my fear that was holding me back, that I actually wasn't brave and capable of this. And like, if someone was like, who the hell do you think you are trying to do this? That would come back. I think there's my own ego that was in the way, that was like, oh God, what are people going to think? And like, just shame. Like, I think there was so many feelings that like prohibited me from moving forward for kind of 3 months. And once I just like sat myself down and said, it's time to make money, Laura. Like, you gotta, let's start putting some bread on the table. Like, you also are like, okay, time to get off. Like, you can't just keep saying you're going to do this. You actually have to do something to like move forward. You know, you don't wake up and say, I'm going to run a 5K today. Maybe some people do. I don't. It takes a lot. You have to do the baby steps to get there. And I think it was really stopping to say, okay, what are the baby steps? Like, how many LinkedIn messages do I need to send? How many people do I need to network with? Like, what are the steps to get me to this end goal?
It's interesting that you touch on ego, because I am a great believer, as you just mentioned, around what's the worst that can happen, right? You get a job somewhere and you do something that maybe you haven't got 15 years experience in and you wouldn't choose otherwise to do. But it's super interesting, because I met a couple of people last week who I was chatting to, and they had just been made redundant, and so are in this terrible situation where they do still need to work. They want to work, but they cannot find a role and a job within their sort of circle and their profession. They were all within sort of tech, and one of them said to me, oh, do you know what, I've found a role and it's fine for now. And he was driving for a supermarket, and he really had got some very interesting responses when he had told family or friends of what he was doing. But his point was, actually what's stopping other people doing that is ego, and actually just having the courage to tell people that that's what you're doing.
Totally.
The ego piece is such an interesting one around, as you say, A, navigating a change,
Totally,
but also B, sometimes just doing what you've got to do for a period of time, and knowing that you're comfortable with that and you're okay with that. And it really takes stripping that ego back, I think, to actually sort of deliver and do that.
Yeah, completely. What was the worst that was going to happen? You know, like the worst that would happen was work in a cafe, which is like, how is that the worst thing that can happen? Like, I wake up early and I have the rest of the day to myself, you know, like, yeah, I'm not making a tech salary, but I'm still making money and I'm putting food on the table and paying my rent. But I think we have this, like, I don't know, we live in capitalist society, right? Where it's more and more and more, and make as much as you can and get as much as you can to buy the house and do all these things. And it's like, do you actually need it? I don't know. I've yet to decide. Money is definitely helpful, but I don't know that it buys happiness.
And I think it's a couple of things, isn't it? It's like, what is happiness? And it's defining what happiness is. And it's also then, I think, a relationship with money, and your relationship with money and what that looks like. So I think, you know, it's so individual for everybody.
Totally.
But one thing I am fascinated about more and more is that people don't actually explore that. So they don't explore what happiness is without money and with money, and therefore don't really know what makes them happy. You know, is it the Versace that makes them happy, or is it a sunset walk that makes them happy? I don't think people do enough of actually exploring that. And then I also don't think people do enough of really exploring their relationship with money, and the stories we've touched on, that blueprint, and the stories that we've been told, and societal kind of impacts and cultural influences. I don't think enough people really unpick their own stories with money and their relationship with money, and therefore what life could look like. And it fascinates me still to this day that a lot of people that I work with have no idea what the minimum is that they need. So when I sort of ask them and say, what's the minimum that you need to earn? So if we're looking at, I do a lot of work with individuals looking to transition careers. So they're doing something that they absolutely know they don't want to be doing, but they don't know what they want to be doing, and they've got no idea how to change and how to transition into that. And so we do a lot of work around what their priorities are. And of course, as we touched on, people have constraints around things like mortgage, or, you know, children, and their priority being in one place and giving the children that sort of grounding start, which is all amazing. What they don't know is actually what the minimum is that they need to earn to maintain that. And it just fascinates me that they don't know. They've never thought about it. They've never looked at it. And so actually, does that then give them permission to do something totally different? You know, if they know what the minimum is, and we sort of strip away this, oh, but I'm going for a promotion, I'm going for the next thing, I'm going for a pay rise, I'm going for this. Strip away all of that. What do you actually minimum need? And half the time they are so shocked that actually it's nowhere near what they thought it would be. And so it gives them then the permission to think about a change and actually start to navigate that.
Yeah, I fully resonate with all of that. I did some work a few years ago in money, diagnosing my own relationship with money and what I want money to like serve a purpose in my life for. It's a very privileged position to be able to do that. It was like one of the best things I've ever done as well, is like being able to say, okay, what purpose does money actually serve in my life? Because to your point, yeah, I can go for the next promotion and I can make another 20 or 30 or 40K or whatever, but is that what's going to deliver my life for me? Like the things that are important to me are family, our travel, are my friends, our experiences. I want my money to help help support those things, right? Like I want to be able to travel once a year somewhere crazy, or like do what I'm doing now, spend 3 months abroad where I've been able to be home with my family for the first time in 2 years. And I've been able to go to Japan to my brother's wedding. And now I'm in Bali for a month, like existing here as a digital nomad, quote unquote. And yeah, I think it's really important to get to the core of like, to your point, what is the minimum I need? What is then the extra, and how am I going to get that? Like, I think it's so much easier, like to start with that minimum and then to fill the gaps. It's easy to say, okay, I actually only need 50K this year to live. And like, how do I get 50K? It's a really solid exercise for people to do. And I highly recommend, thinking about not what money does for you, but like, what do you want in life? And like, how can money unlock those things for you?
Yeah, totally. And how money can facilitate those themes or those values that are so important, rather than it just be this thing that we're chasing consistently because we're programmed to do that.
Totally.
So what does Laura post-break, you touched on it a minute ago, but what does Laura post-break look like versus pre-break?
It's a good question. I think I'm a bit more confident. I think I've always had a little bit of confidence, but I'm definitely more confident. I'm more like assured that this is the right path for me. Like I've been traveling, like I said, for the last 2 months, almost 3 months, and it's been hard. Like it's not easy. There are challenges in traveling, and there are challenges in time zones, and dealing with your clients in Australia when you're based in New York. There's issues there, and you're present with your family, but you're not necessarily mentally present because you're waiting for the next meeting, or you're waiting for like whatever else. So there's like new kinks to figure out. But I think the best part of like post-break Laura is that there's choice, and choice feels really exciting. And it doesn't feel like I'm stuck in one thing. It feels like, you know what, if in 2 years time I actually want to go back to full-time work, I can. Again, that is a choice I can make, and I know what that looks like, but I can also make this choice to stay doing what I'm doing. And I have the choice of right now location. Like I said, I'm in Bali, and like my clients are in Australia and the US, and I get to still work with them, and I'm delivering on all of my deliverables. And yeah, I get the choice of going to yoga after this call, in like a beautiful jungle of Ubud. So it's, I think choice is what I've gained. And I'm really, really grateful to myself for that.
What a gift to give yourself that perhaps pre-break Laura didn't even know was possible, by the sounds of it.
Totally. I don't think she did, but I'm proud of her. She did a good job.
Yeah, she did. She's done a great job. What would be your advice to individuals coming back from a break that decide they're not really wanting to go back into what they were doing before, or corporate, and wanting to explore contracting or fractional work?
I think my biggest advice is just do it. Like to take the Nike slogan, but I had so many conversations. I think networking is a big thing, and I'm really grateful at how much networking I actually did do. I've joined some Slack communities with marketers in them. I've joined freelance Slack communities. I've joined a bunch of, communities where people who are doing what I want to do hang out. And I think that's also really important, to the point of being able to see other people doing the thing and to like surround yourself in people doing the thing. So I've found what those areas are for me. Like I've joined a startup accelerator actually because I thought maybe I wanted to start my own business in like a different capacity than just fractional marketing, which is still maybe on the back burner. But I think the main thing is, do it and surround yourself with people who are doing it. And it's not that hard. Like it sounds scary and hard, but it's not that hard.
It's so funny. Danielle, who came on, I think it was series 1 of the podcast, she always says that your network is your net worth. And how important it is, however long you're away physically from a community, to just keep in touch, and how that network really does set you up in good stead for whatever is next.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, another point in this podcast, you know, like when I put that LinkedIn post out, one of the people that replied was an old boss. And she was like, oh, I need some help. And I hadn't worked for her for 6 years, maybe. That unlocked the door. And that like gave me that boost of confidence to be like, okay, you're now billing X amount each month and you're only working 2 days a week. So if you can do that on 2 days a week, let's find another client you can do that for 2 days a week. And let's find another client you can do that for another day a week. And then you've got a full book of business, and really breaking it down. Like, I think the unknown is really scary. And I think the more you can kind of put a plan in place to say, okay, what does it actually look like? Is it, I just need one client? Like, let's start with one client. Let's not try and get 12, you know, like, because that's really daunting, but it's get to that first stepping stone. Like, you don't need to climb Everest. You just need to start walking.
Yeah, absolutely. And celebrating along the way. I think that's one of my lessons, is even the small little things with the French paperwork and the bureaucracy around residency in France and healthcare system in France and everything. Actually, let's celebrate even just the baby steps, even the tiny steps. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. I always end the podcast by asking individuals for their top 3 tips to anybody who is thinking about currently navigating or coming back from a sabbatical or career break. What would your top 3 tips be, Laura?
I think my top tip is like, learn your finances. Figure out what your like minimum is. What do you want money to act as in your life? The second one is save your money. Like, if you want to go on a break, you need money. And I was lucky enough to know what money did for me. I saved my money. And I think the third one is like, don't let fear stop you. I think it's so natural, to our point of like, what's the worst that can happen? I've also been like following this guy on Instagram who uses like, show me how good it can get.
Oh, I love that.
Show me how good it can get. Like, if I quit, show me how good it can get. Like, what's the worst that happens? I go traveling for 5 months in Europe and it only gets better. So yeah, just do it.
Yeah, feel the fear and do it anyway. I love it. Where can people contact you or get in touch with you if they're wanting some marketing done, or know of anybody who wants marketing done? Where's the best place to get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, please. My name is Laura Blagys. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes or however this gets published. The company I guess I'm trading under is One Lady Marketing. So website coming soon, oneladymarketing.com.au, because I'm just one lady who does marketing.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yes, they will all go in the show notes. And once again, thank you so much, and enjoy your Bali yoga chill time before coming back to Sydney.
Thank you so much. This is so fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks so much for listening, and huge thanks to Laura for sharing her story with such honesty and humour. From corporate life in Sydney to a 5-month European reset to now running a thriving fractional marketing business from anywhere in the world, Laura's journey shows that freedom and fulfilment often start with the courage to pause and let go. If you'd like to connect with Laura, you can find her on LinkedIn, and I'll pop the link in the show notes. As always, a huge thanks to Auntie B at the Flaxen, my incredible, patient and talented producer. To Nikki, also from the Flaxen, who brings the show to life on social media. Plus a huge shout out to Joe Cook, whose soulful vocals we're lucky enough to feature throughout the show. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do like and rate the show. It helps others discover these stories. And if you know somebody who needs to hear Laura's journey, do send it their way. Do you have a sabbatical story of your own? Or maybe you know someone whose experience could inspire others? Please do reach out or message me on LinkedIn, I'm Bex Thomas, or on Instagram, we're Sabbatical Stories Podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep dreaming big, and remember, your sabbatical story might just be waiting to be written.